This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it is Thursday. It's February 8th, 2024. This is the Truth Central. Thank you for joining us. And X, you can follow me at Corsi Jerome 1, CorsiJerome 1. And on Substack, we posted some new things on Substack yesterday. It's JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. Okay, let's take a look at what's going on today. The big story today is that Trump's case is going to be argued before the Supreme Court. This is the case about the election interference. Essentially, what's the lawfare the left is trying to do is to just prevent Donald Trump from being on the ballot. They're insane that Donald Trump could come back to power. So the case that's brought is a case on the 14th Amendment. Now, the 14th Amendment is one that is not well understood by the public. It was a Civil War piece of legislation. It's passed after it was an amendment to the Constitution after the Civil War was over. And the point was that the states were denying many slaves the right to vote, and the slaves who had been freed were being still very much persecuted. And so the 14th Amendment it says that any state action that denies someone their rights under the Constitution, that's illegal. That's unconstitutional. So the state cannot take an action that negates a right that has been granted by the national government, federal government. So therefore, if there's a right to vote that is granted by an amendment, or the slaves are freed, any rights that are impinged because of basically it was Jim Crow was the name of what they called the continued suppression of rights of the blacks after they were liberated from slavery in the South during the 1860s through probably the 1880s, perhaps even continuing today. I mean, these are the kinds of arguments we've had in this country over slavery and racism, and it's the key point that these neo-Marxists use to try to radicalize the country. So there's a provision in the 14th Amendment that says that if a person was part of an insurrection, then they cannot hold a public office. Now, essentially, certainly not a federal public office. Now, the point of this amendment is that the language is difficult because it's complicated, like most legal issues are. So the argument is that Donald Trump, by encouraging the January 6th taking over or marching into the Capitol, was conducting an insurrection because the election had been certified or was being certified by Congress. And so the election was legitimate, and therefore to object to the election being legitimate by a protest that took over the Capitol was an insurrection. So therefore, because of that provision in the 14th Amendment, the lawfare argument is that Trump cannot be running for president again. Now, the problem with all this is it's very stretched. To begin with, Trump was the president. How could he have an insurrection against himself? Secondly, there's a lot of complicated legal arguments. This lawfare means comes from the Harvard. Larry Tribe is one of the professors there, and I've known him when I was much younger. We crossed each other in different ways when I was at Harvard and before I was at Harvard. And Larry Tribe is very, very leftist. He was a constitutional law professor. He published a book on the Constitution, on constitutional law. He wanted to be on the Supreme Court. He was not on the Supreme Court. He's probably retired now or emeritus at Harvard. But the point is, he didn't get what he wanted. He became very, very leftist radicalized. And they came up with this idea of using the law and provisions of the law politically to interpret laws in order to advance political objectives. So it becomes like lawfare as in warfare, using the law to go to war with your political enemies. That's what it amounts to. So if, in fact, the Supreme Court were to say that under the 14th Amendment, Section 3, the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868 and was intended to prevent former Confederates who had served in the Confederate Army from taking office. Now, the former Colorado state legislature, who was Republican Norma Anderson, and other state voters argue that the wording of this Section 3 also applies to the events of January 6, 2021. More specifically, they argue that President Trump is an officer of the United States who engaged in the type of insurrection covered by Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. President Trump has suggested that ballot challenges are altogether inappropriate given that Section 3 wording bars someone from holding office, not from running for it. Okay, so these are a lot of complicated legal arguments, and it's going to be very interesting to legal scholars how it is debated before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will likely broadcast this. They typically do broadcast at least an oral argument are heard. I don't think they yet allow cameras into the chamber during the arguments, but they will be live streamed oral arguments that you can listen to. And they're complicated because many of the judges ask questions in order to test reactions. There's a game trying to read and interpret whether a judge is going to vote for or against a certain case, or by what questions they ask. So you're trying to infer, well, the judge asked this, it means they're thinking this, so therefore they're probably going to conclude X, Y, Z. But the problem is a lot of judges ask questions just to test out the lawyers and to get different opinions, make them think. They ask questions that they don't intend to go there, but they want to test the other side's argument. So they sound like they're supporting the other side's argument, but they're merely testing the other side's argument. So you really can't make a firm determination by listening to oral arguments where a particular judge is on the issue at stake in the case. But it's conceivable that the Supreme Court could disqualify Trump under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It would mean that this is possibly, if in fact they do, if the Supreme Court rules that Trump cannot run for office or can be taken off the ballot on this issue, it's going to be a major, major political decision by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court does not like to make political decisions. It's why, arguably, the Supreme Court did not enter into the litigation that was submitted to it, the case during the 2020 election. Some 35 states joined in a case saying that the election laws were changed by election officials, by the state governor. Various people changed the procedures in 2020 to allow this mail-in balloting to occur, and the drop-off boxes and all the rest that we had. And the Constitution specifies that only the state legislature can make changes in a presidential election. Now, that should have been a clear issue, but the Justice Roberts and the court did not take it. They didn't hear the case. And so, therefore, this case now is the next really big political case to come before the court. And the court has taken this case. And it reminds me of of course, the famous court case in the election with 2000 with George W. Bush against Al Gore, when the Supreme Court came in and ended the recounting. And so the Supreme Court effectively elected George W. Bush president because the election recounting at that point did not overturn the results of the election count the night of the election. So now we've got a lot of irregularities in our voting. We've got people stopping counting, resuming counting. When the counting resumes, the Democrats suddenly have magically enough votes to start winning. The votes were produced overnight after the Democrats knew how many votes they needed, and they went out and produced them. We've got precincts in areas of the country where more people voted than are registered to vote. There's all kinds of irregularities. Our voting system is really a mess. And with these machine voting, the ability to tamper with the machines, American people have lost trust, I think, in a lot of the voting altogether. It's a very important case. And we're going to watch it very closely. The nation's going to watch it very closely. If Donald Trump is prevented from running for election when he's this far in the lead, the United States is going to lose face all around the world as having moved away from a democratic process. And it's unimaginable to me that Donald Trump is not going to be able to run for office because the people could just write him in. The people, Abraham Lincoln said, in a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, no court or election official ought to decide who's president. The people need to decide. And the people want Donald Trump. It's going to be very hard this time to steal the election, although the effort is underway, and it's going to be the Lawfare case is going to be presented to the Supreme Court and argued today. It's an historic day. Okay, I want to continue with a couple of other stories that really kind of show where the country is and with this woke agenda. And I consider this to be one of the worst things that has ever happened to America. We are going communist with this Democratic Party is communist. Now, the story I'm going to focus on is Ford announced today, Ford Automobile Company, that it's going to lose billions of dollars on the electric car vehicles. Okay, so more bad news for the electric vehicle manufacturers. Ford has revealed it incurred a loss of $4.7 billion on its electrical vehicle range, more than the $4.5 billion the company predicted in the middle of last year. Now that's amazing. I mean, it's a huge loss, $4.7 billion. Why? Because they're expensive to produce, these electric vehicles. People don't want them. Can't charge them in a deep winter. Can't drive with them across country without making sure you can find a refueling station. They take a long time to refuel. They're heavy. The batteries burn. They don't really save carbon dioxide because you have to get the rare earth minerals that you need to produce the batteries. So when the customers see these cars, they just say, in SUVs and trucks and everything they're trying to make electric, that people don't want them. And so dealers don't want them because they have to tie up inventory, and the dealers want to move cars. They don't want them sitting on the lots because nobody wants to buy them. Now, the stories are coming out increasingly, and I've been following this. They're a net zero watch. There is a report that it says The Retreat from Net Zero. It's by Ross Clark. Ross Clark is a author who writes a columnist at The Spectator. And he, for instance, he also writes in the Daily Telegraph, Daily Mail, The Express. And several books he's written, including The Denial, which is a satirical novel on climate change, and Net Zero, how an irrational target will impoverish you, help China, and won't even save the planet, which is the truth. Okay, so just take a minute to look at the titles of the chapters in this book, which I think are revealing by themselves. Chapter 1 is Fossil Fuel Demand has never been higher. Well, they're not fossil fuels, first of all. And I've written 2 books on this. I want Chris to show them. The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change, which argues that climate science is much more complicated than carbon dioxide. And then also The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. And we're going into the anarchy part of this cultural revolution that the woke are trying to force upon us. So first, hydrocarbon fuels have never been higher in demand. Wind looks less breezy, solar less sunny, the hydrogen economy losing its puff, small nuclear reactors failing to glow, electric cars running out of juice, heat pumps cooling down, electric planes left on the runway, and investments drying up. mean, that's the whole story right there. These things don't work. None of the ideas of the woke work. Harari, who is this supposedly, now he's an agenda determiner, an agenda contributor at the World Economic Forum. They're distancing themselves from Harari. His speeches and books, if you read them, are horrible, horrifying. He's saying there's too many billions of people, and we need to extinguish how many billions of people we have. We need to depopulate. Well, in the introduction to this book on terms of the net zero is dead duck, the retreat from net zero by Ross Clark. I'll just read a paragraph here, a few sentences. He's saying the president of the COP28 in Dubai in December 2023, who was Sultan Al Jaber, he was unusually frank. Okay, so he serves as the chair of the Dubai State Oil Corporation, which is ADNOC. It recently announced a $150 billion investment to increase oil production by nearly 50% to 5 million barrels a day by 2027. And what Al Jaber did is he told the former Irish president, Mary Robinson, quote, "Show me a roadmap for the phase out of hydrocarbon fuels that allows for social, sustainable development, unless you want to take the world back into the caves." Well, the truth is that this climate change agenda was constructed by neo-Marxists who do want to take us back into the caves. Now, the Hararis think that they and their World Economic Forum buddies can be the oligarchs who have all the resources of the earth to themselves, and they'll be rich and happy with their machines doing the work. And the machines inbred with them as they get themselves implanted with chips so they become transhuman, while the rest of us are not needed. We're all useless eaters. And Harari has said, what are you going to do with billions of people who are useless? And their solution is give them drugs, put them in front of a computer, play them video games, give them perpetual sports, amuse them, let them gamble, and keep them happy, keep them dumb, keep them out of our way. And essentially, they will not want to keep them fed. So the attack on food is part of the current World Economic Forum agenda. That's why you see so many people resisting this agenda. Worldwide, this attempt to destroy all that is good about the economy we have in terms of a modern industrial state. So we can't use nitrogen fertilizers. We can't have animals. We can't eat meat. We have to be in 15-minute cities where we can walk to everything. These are dystopian ideas, and the American people, the people around the world, are rejecting them. There's a couple of articles out today about that, and I think they're very interesting because what they're showing is that the tide has turned against this whole idea of the Great Reset. So the Great Reset is dead. The Economic Forum, World Economic Forum today was this year was rebuilding trust. Well, they know they've lost trust. Their agenda is out in the open. And they do not have an agenda to replace it that they can sell, except to lie. And they're good at lying, about all they're good at. So when you asked Harari what you see in the future, he said basically violence and chaos. Well, the violence and chaos are a result of trying to force a global order on humanity when humanity does not want the global order. This is an impending crisis of world dimensions. And I've quoted and been working with trying to get the word of Archbishop Vigano out more clearly, because he's one who I think uniquely understands what's going on in the world today. What he's saying is, I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs of his most recent letter. He did a letter here to the Stephen Frost Group, which is a group internationally that meets twice a week. and with very, very good presentations. What Archbishop Vigano, that's Vigano, wrote, put the current New World Order move into the category of satanic. And he explained it, I think, in ways that is truly prosaic. I mean, it's really beautifully written. I'm just going to find the paragraph here in 1 second and read it to you, because it's important that we get this kind of a message out there. Okay, so he says here, the global coup d'etat, which is what this is, a global overturning of traditional order, must be denounced, and those responsible must be tried and judged by an international court. But above all, it is necessary for all of us to understand that this all-out war against humanity is not motivated only by the lust for wealth and power, but mainly by a religious motive, a theological reason. This reason is Satan's hatred of God, hatred of God's creation, hatred of man who was created in the image and likeness of God. Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, George Soros, and the hundreds of servants whom they blackmail in government all hate God. They hate life, which only God can give. They hate love, which comes only from God. They hate peace, which can reign only where Christ reigns. As Tucker Carlson said a few days ago, we are facing people who serve Satan and the demons of hell, just as normal people worship and serve God. Now, it's important that Tucker Carlson right now is in Moscow. And of course, the screeching demons of the woke Congress are going insane, saying this is criminal. He can't be allowed to come back to the United States. He's interviewing Putin, and Putin is horrible. He's a world criminal. Look, no one's going to have to say Putin's a saint, or that any political leader is perfect. But what Putin and Medved are doing, and Tucker Carlson is part of a back channeling, Medved is reaching out. And it's no coincidence that Archbishop Vigano is mentioning Tucker Carlson, because there are various forces right now trying to get a dialogue going, a back channel, very much like President Kennedy established with Khrushchev during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, for the first time, Russian President Dmitry Medved has warned that a direct war between Moscow forces and NATO would lead to a nuclear apocalypse. I'm telling people that nuclear war is possible, and it could occur this year, an election year. They need some big crisis in order to not have Donald Trump be elected. Well, the demons in the State Department, just like in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Joint Chiefs wanted to go to nuclear war with Russia over the Russian nuclear missiles that Khrushchev placed in Cuba, 1962. And Jack Kennedy saw that this could be a world war. Every time he brought in the military, they're pounding the table, demanding that we invade Cuba, that we go to war with Russia, and that we could win a nuclear war. This is absolute madness. And I think we're there again. I think the woke see a nuclear war as fast tracking to the getting rid of billions of people on the planet. So the current deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council issued the warning on Telegram Wednesday in response to recent statements and reports that some European leaders are telling their populations to prepare for war. We've got 47 bases in Scandinavia. We used to have none. Scandinavia, Finland in particular, is a key strategic territory for Russia because it's the access to the Baltic Sea, which is Russia's access to the North Atlantic. Even in the 1939 pact between Hitler and Stalin, when Nazi Germany agreed not to attack Stalin, and Stalin agreed likewise, they did that for a period of time. Eventually, Stalin woke up to find out that Hitler had attacked. But in that period of time, Stalin moved into Finland and he moved into Ukraine to secure the territories. So last month, the U.S. Army Chief General Patrick Sanders called on authorities to mobilize the nation to prepare. This is the UK Army General Patrick Sanders. He called on authorities to mobilize the nation to prepare for war with Putin. The population needs to shift in thinking to be ready. Medved mocked this and other examples of NATO leaders accusing Moscow of seeking a broader war as anything. It's just dangerous dribble. He said that all this about bolstering support for weapons, all they're trying to do, all the Bidens are doing, corruption is rampant. And when corruption is this rampant, it's a sign of the evil, and our Department of Justice is doing nothing about it. But the major message I'm coming to today is that everything the woke wants to do is aimed at destroying, not rebuilding, not advancing, no utopia, just massive death. And it is conceivable to me that Medved is reaching out. Tucker Carlson is right now in Moscow, and I think he's going to come back with the message that Putin does not want World War III, but is willing to go to it if that's where NATO's headed. And this is an extremely dangerous moment in human history, questioning whether there will be any more human history. Nuclear apocalypse is almost unimaginable in its destructive consequences. And I'm saying within the next 6 months, we better prepare and pray that it doesn't happen, because there are forces in the world that are planning for it to happen. Medved said that this is part of the State Department of the West, the Biden administration's efforts to prop up Ukraine, quote, a dying country that is foreign to taxpayers. Okay, while ignoring the problems we have in the United States. Therefore, every day, the leaders of these countries broadcast, we need to prepare for war with Russia and to continue to help Ukraine. Now, I think this is what's going to take Mitch McConnell down. After this border bill failed, and it was a terrible border bill, we're having an invasion across the border. And this is not the way to have immigration. We don't know who's coming into the country. We've got drugs coming into the country, criminals coming into the country. So what Medved is saying is, since our military capabilities are incomparable, we will simply have no choice. Russia has hypersonic nuclear weapons that are superior to ours. Our military has got guys in dresses walking around doing DEI drills when the troops are saying, we're out of here, forcing troops to be going through what is not military discipline in any traditional sense. You cannot have a transgender military. So Medved, since our military capabilities are incomparable, we will simply have no choice. The response will be asymmetrical. To protect the territorial integrity of our country, ballistic and cruise missiles with special warheads will be used. This will be the proverbial apocalypse, the end of everything. Now, Medved has made statements like this before, but this coming right at now, at the time it's coming, has got to be taken extremely seriously. And it's not coming by accident. What Medved knows is he's addressing the chaos that is going on in the world and is apparent to anybody paying attention. So let's turn to this article here from Michael Snyder, and he's a very good writer. He has the End of America Dream blog, the End of the American Dream blog. And he's saying 12 insane examples that show just how far the U.S. has fallen. And it is pretty pathetic. So first, number one, a social media influencer that returned a couch to Costco after using it for more than 2 years is telling her followers to buy all the furniture from Costco because you can return it when you don't like it anymore. The U.S. Navy is having a difficult time recruiting young people, so they've decided a new radical approach is needed. From now on, a high school diploma will no longer be necessary. 3 years ago, the city of Portland decriminalized the possession of drugs. So therefore, what's the result? Oregon leaders have declared a 90-day state of emergency in Portland's battle against the debilitating this fentanyl, which had a crisis for 3 years after the decriminalizing the possession of drugs. Western Oregon University has decided that D and F grades will no longer be earned by anyone because they are repressive. I guess it doesn't treat everybody equally. It's not DEI. Every police officer in El Paso, Texas, will be forced to ask for the preferred pronouns of every person they encounter. A group of migrants was caught on camera physically attacking police in Times Square and was shockingly released without even having to post bail. A group of pro-lifers in Tennessee face 11 years in prison for praying and singing outside of an abortion clinic. The 24-year-old aide to U.S. Senator Ben Cardin that was filmed having gay sex in a Senate hearing room will not be charged with breaking any laws. So violent carjackers are roaming fearlessly the streets of Washington, D.C., and anyone who resists one of these carjackers can end up dead. That's precisely what happened to an official who worked in the Trump administration. This Mike Gill died after being shot in front of his wife during a carjacking in Washington, D.C. The Chinese and other foreign buyers are purchasing millions of acres of U.S. farmland, but nobody knows exactly how much farmland they now own, and very few of our politicians are interested in stopping this practice. So many radical Muslims have moved into Dearborn, Michigan, that the Wall Street Journal is referring to it as America's jihad capital. A teacher in Massachusetts that had a spotless record for 23 years was fired after she revealed the truth about what was really going on in her school. So Bonnie Manchester had a spotless record of 23 years as a teacher at Baird Middle School. She laid it all on the line when she saw what was happening to vulnerable children. The report in Manchester, one of the papers in Massachusetts, said Bonnie Manchester is a Christian middle school teacher who was fired from her job in 2021. Her crime was informing a father and mother that school officials were referring to their daughter as a boy and keeping it secret from them. When these systems are all this broken, and this is what the left wants to do, it produces disorganization, produces anarchy. It's one of my books is about how this neo-Marxism and the cultural Maoism ends up in anarchy. And that's what's happening. Now, a couple more stories I want to follow here quickly. One is that Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday rejected the Hamas call for a ceasefire. What Hamas was asking for was a 4.5 month ceasefire. They would release all the hostages, and Israel would withdraw its troops from Gaza in an agreement to end the war. Well, Netanyahu said that's ridiculous. First of all, they're there to destroy Hamas, not to withdraw, having done a partial job. Netanyahu said, continued military pressure is a necessary condition for the release of the hostages. But at the same time, our Secretary of State, Blinken, is suggesting that we need to have a Palestinian state recognized by the Biden administration. So Blinken, in a late-night press conference at a Tel Aviv hotel, said there are non-starters in the Hamas proposal. But he said we also see space to pursue negotiations to see if we can get an agreement. And that's what we intend to do. Well, there's not going to be an agreement here. Not unless Israel runs out of money or needs to be rearmed, and we refuse to do it. So this is a desperate situation, and that war is going to continue. At the same time, Ukraine is going to continue with its war. And Dershowitz has a very good article here today in the Gatestone Institute, where he's saying that we are now in a proxy war with Iran. But if we start actually going after military targets inside Iran, then, for instance, bombing their oil and gas facilities or its command centers, go to war with Iran, this would lead to a complete destabilization in the region. Now, the longer term, Dershowitz realizes that until we do something about Iran, this is going to be a continuing situation. That's part of the problem. There's no real good solution here because the Iranian regime is determined to destroy Israel. And when they get a nuclear weapon, sooner or later, they're going to use it. And the Biden administration is like the Obama administration, is doing nothing seriously to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Now we're refunding. Obama sent airplanes full of money to Iran with John Kerry as Secretary of State. And the Biden administration, also influenced by John Kerry, who was until recently the climate czar. So John Kerry been behind working with Iran since he ran for president in 2004. He was always willing to give Iran nuclear power to see what they would do with it. Well, Clinton gave Korea nuclear power to see what they do with it. They made bombs out of it. So now the Biden strategy, we're going after radical Islamic groups in Syria, Iraq, and in Yemen. We've got the Red Sea being shut down to shipping because of the rebels in Yemen and their small boats attacking commercial shipping. So the Middle East is also on the edge of a massive regional war. It's very discouraging to see this happening. And the last story I want to report on today is one that also deeply disturbs me. It's another story in the GatesstoneInstitute.org by Raymond Ibrahim. Good writer. He's saying that Christians are being persecuted all over the world. In 2023, around the world, 4,998 Christians, on the average 13 a day, were killed for faith reasons, almost 5,000 a day. Christians are being prosecuted by another 4,125 Christians a day were detained or arrested, and 14,766 churches and other Christian institutions were attacked in 2023. Overall, the global persecution of Christians remains higher than ever. So the 365 million believers worldwide are facing high levels of persecution and discrimination because of their faith. This is a shocking story. And all these stories today are fulfilling things that have been written in the Apocalypse of St. John, the last book of the Bible, which describes these dystopian times. And it troubles me to see the world at this point. We're trying to do everything we can to make it clear. I've been trying for 20 years to make it clear that this neo-Marxism would come to this point, and it is here now. And we're going to have to deal with it. I'm going to conclude this with my usual appeal that only God can win, and God will win. But Chris has had a cold this week, and he's been kind of restrained from making too many comments. But Chris, you want to make a comment on what we covered today in the show?
I used to produce a show in Brooklyn. It comes out of Brooklyn, so it's a New York City show. It was on AM 970, The Answer, Michael Connor's show. We would have Father Paul on. I can't really disclose everything about him because he has to keep himself low key. But he runs a mission in Lebanon that takes care of. It's a hospital mission in Lebanon to take care of Christians who are persecuted down there. This is something that's never been reported. I've talked to him several times. I've had him on this show several times, and it's something that for some reason the mainstream media barely ever, if at all, wants to touch. But it's really happening out there. It's a very serious issue, and his ministry, his mission does need a lot of help. He's been running this for a long time, at the risk of his own head, to be honest with you.
Well, there are brave priests like this, and
Father Paul Balecki. That's right, Paul Balecki.
Archbishop Vigano is one of them.
Yes.
Let's wrap it up. By the way, if you like the show, please take a look at our sponsors. Get a copy of the free book, How the Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush. And Chris will show you the book. You can get it by calling Swiss America. Please do call Swiss America. This is a time to get some gold. 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Get a copy of The Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush. There's a lot of good articles on the website. Take a look at the Substack at JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. I just posted some yesterday. I'll probably post some more today. Also, we're on a lot of different channels. We're going to do a lot more with Cloud Hub in the future. We're on iHeart. We're on, Chris is showing you in the upper right-hand corner of the website, thetruthcentral.com. You can see all the sites we're on. That's my Substack. That's what it looks like. It's got a lot of good information on it. Please take a look at it. We'll have more. We're going to continually build on it from things I've been writing for the past 20 years. These e-pipes are really interesting. They're new technology. And I'm selling some of my books. These are my current books, which link to Amazon that Chris is showing you now. But on the link at the top where it says books, autographed books for sale, right there, the last item in the top black bar at the top of the website, I'm selling Atomic Iran, Black Gold Stranglehold, signed editions, and you can buy them with these e-pipes just by grab this book. And please do it. I have a limited supply of these. I'm going to sell them at reasonable prices and ship them to you. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. In the end, God always wins. God is going to win here too. Maybe a final battle that we're going into with Satan. God did not create this world to lose. He did not create human beings to lose. He created us to win. The Bible continuously says, fear not. With God, all things are possible. And this darkness can be expelled very quickly by God if enough of us join in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14 and get down on our knees and repent for letting the world get to this place. God will hear our prayer and heal our land. And it will be a difficult time. 2024 is going to be a chaotic year. But with the help of God, we'll get through it. And with the help of God, we'll send Satan back to hell for 1,000 years and lock him up where he belongs. This darkness needs to get out. We need to shine the light. That's why I'm doing everything is the truth. Thetruthcentral.com, the website, the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change, which is that there are all lies. We're not having a climate crisis. Climate change is called summer, fall, winter, spring. It happens every year. The truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy. We're seeing now the anarchy. It's only beginning. It'll get worse before it gets better. But with God's help, it will get better. Thank you for joining us. We're broadcasting every weekday. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless.